from Project Management Institute. As Dave is joining, Dave is the Chief Strategy and Growth Officer at PMI. So he's charged with assisting PMI to build teams that are aligned and seamlessly integrated across the organization. He's been a co-founder in the past, president and CEO of projectmanagement.com, and which was an online community for project professionals in 2000. One of the interesting things I've been reading about Dave and some of the literature from PMI is this whole notion and concept of how they've looked at citizen developers, right? A very, very interesting topic. Welcome, Dave.
Thanks, Narendra. Very glad to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. Really appreciate the time.
Sure. I thought it might be good, if it's okay with you, to talk a little bit about what PMI is doing in this space, just to sort of frame things out. I think the perspective that I'm going to bring to this is a little bit different from your other panelists, so it'd be good to sort of frame it out up front.
Please go ahead.
So, as you mentioned, I'm the Chief Strategy and Growth Officer for PMI. And one of the things I wanted to let everyone know up front is that we are a for-purpose organization. We're a not-for-profit driven by impact, not revenue. We create standards, training, certification that help people drive change. And we'd like to get the community involved in everything we do. So if anyone who can hear me now would like to get involved in our efforts around citizen development, I'd like for them to reach out to me. My email address is dave.garrett@pmi.org, or you can reach me through LinkedIn, and my LinkedIn profile is on the profile here on the event. So nothing we do is about a platform specific. Nothing we do is platform specific. We're platform agnostic, and nothing's technology specific. We're just about making things happen in the most effective way possible. And in the citizen development space, that means doing things in the most hyper agile way possible. So about a year ago, PMI recognized citizen development as this incredible new hyper agile way of working. And we began testing an idea with our stakeholders of creating a platform agnostic set of standards and certifications in citizen development. Citizen development inherently feels risky, and we felt that we had clear ways to take risk off the table for organizations and for individuals. It can be a confusing space, and many individuals and organizations are sort of unsure about what to do, how to step into it effectively. So we create avenues for that. So just fast forward to today, PMI's built what we call a CDBOK, a Citizen Development Body of Knowledge. And we're nearing completion on a set of certifications for individuals and a maturity model for businesses that makes citizen development work at scale. So we have, it starts off with a practitioner certification for making an individual citizen developer more effective, allowing them to sort of do big things in the way that you were talking about with Suresh, allowing an individual to sort of dive right in and be productive, not just for themselves, but allow them to operate within the overall sort of system, the overall organization, do something good and transformative for the organizations while they're building an app. They're not just building an app, they're considering the upstream and downstream implications of that application. So that's what the practitioner certification helps them do. We offer an architect certification that helps an individual put in place the guardrails, the governance system, the operating system that allows for effective delivery of citizen development across an enterprise. And then finally, we're going to be offering a strategist certification that helps an individual understand how you might use citizen development to drive transformations at the organizational level. So those are the certifications. And then beyond that, we have a citizen development maturity model that allows organizations to understand how much, how their processes and general approach can be truly holistic, truly transformative in their approach, rather than just sort of being siloed applications, applications that play well with everything else in the enterprise. So the citizen development maturity model is going to apply to both organizations and to systems integrators, consulting firms who are applying citizen development. So client organizations will have a way to judge sort of competency of not just individual staff members through certification, but the partners that they work with and their ability to deliver through the citizen development maturity model. So that's a quick overview of who we are and what we bring to the space.
Thank you, Dave. That's awesome. Actually, I had no idea about the certifications for citizen developers. The one question, Dave, is that do we believe that the citizen developer movement is being fueled by these kinds of low code, no code technologies? Or is one driving the other? What's driving the movement of citizen developers?
It's interesting. The world's never going to have a shortage of problems. I think, there's always this. You mentioned in your conversation with Suresh the shortage of software developers, and here in the United States, we have the Bureau of Labor Statistics that talks about the shortage of engineers. They're saying by 2026, the U.S. shortage of engineers is going to exceed 1.2 million, and we've got engineers retiring. We've got a lot of things happening in the space that's creating this shortage. And another discussion that's going on is really software only has a shelf life of a few years. To think, if you think about the world's installed base of software, it's going to need to be rewritten in the coming years in its entirety to be more modular, more flexible, more modern. And who's going to rewrite that software? We're going to need people to do that. And I think in your conversation with Suresh, he was talking about Lotus Notes applications, for instance. There is more than that we can handle in terms of a rewrite from a rewrite perspective. And then 2 years down the road, it needs to be rewritten again. So there's no shortage of work. A lot of citizen development is focused on these sort of improved business processes, improved workflows, and that's just not a one and done proposition. So I think if I'm in the services businesses, I'm in a really, really good place. I think the staffing and skills that I'm going to need is going to evolve over time, but that's sort of just a part of the business that you're in. And the products that PMI is building with subject matter experts in the space are there to help services organizations understand their level of maturity and where their gaps are from a skill set perspective, from an approach perspective. And we're gonna be giving services firms a great way to differentiate and offer their clients confidence in their work.
Interesting. Dave, you mentioned the shortage, right? And most analysts and think tanks are focusing on that, and there's a belief that actually in 2021, 2022, that shortage is going to get much more acute just because every business interaction is getting to be digital. Especially the pandemic has driven a lot of things to be digital. Folks who had never used an app to do banking and were just completely used to, my mom would go to a bank and get her balance updated by a human across the desk and then come back home and then look at her printout. That experience, and I've had to convince her to start using her app. So that's going to grow more and more. So the talent shortage, I think, is a real challenge. Now, what is the profile of folks getting into the citizen developer type efforts? I mentioned earlier, India has the population benefit. There's folks from 40 odd countries which have been listening into these conversations. How do you categorize, or what class of folks do you see? What age of folks do you see coming into the citizen developer effort?
Yeah, it's you asked Suresh a really good question, Narendra, about young people. Yeah. And I think it's interesting. I think people of all ages can get into citizen development, but for young people, this is a really amazing time to turn their ideas into reality. That's actually our PMI winning aspiration, empowering people to turn ideas into reality. If I'm young and I have an idea today, whether it's a business idea or really one for social good, you see a lot of that going on with young people today. It's much easier to build out an application in total or to express an idea in the form of a working application that can then be expanded by professional developers. Technology is today, the technology is an enabler. It's not an impediment. So for young people, it's just a great time to be alive. I was listening to Suresh talking about, low code versus no code. To me, a lot of it is just citizen development. People, there's been business people writing code, especially with Excel and those types of things for a long time. So low code isn't really necessarily just a pure domain of the professional developer, although it can be. It can also apply to citizen developers as well. So there's just a lot. It's just a lot easier to do things in today's environment. And you'll see in the startup space, no code and no code is huge from a platform perspective. You can't launch a software platform today without it having some sort of low code, no code angle. And from a startup entrepreneur perspective, it's just a huge enabler of things happening. You mentioned you don't necessarily need a CTO, full stack CTO today. You can go at it by yourself and at least get it to a point where you've shaped an idea and you can show it to people in a very tangible way that helps you get money, that helps you advance your idea in 100 different ways. So that's young people, and I think that's the opportunity for young folks. I think for business people in general. Citizen developer just helps them make things happen. Rather than adding to an endless IT backlog, they help make things better for themselves and for others. And what we're trying to do with this CD body of knowledge is to help them ensure that what they're doing is not only good for them, they're not just building an app that makes sense for them, but it's something that's good for the organization. We help avoid all the shadow IT issues that organizations are already grappling with. They have to worry about, the tools and, things that people are downloading and creating sort of siloed applications with. What we're doing is creating a system of governance, a system that helps accelerate true transformation in ways that help the developer and also help the organization, keep a lid on things, sort of set up a set of guardrails and governance to help people manage things the right way.
The shadow IT problem is so real. If I was a CIO listening to our conversation and Suresh's conversation, I'm thinking, I'm shutting all those things down. Nothing of this is coming in my environment. You can do low, no code all day long, as long as you don't operate on data. You can read and create whatever graphs and charts you want, but you're not touching my data. But you brought up a very interesting point about governance and security and teaching them about flows. Could you elaborate on that a little bit? Was one of my thoughts. And the other thing which I was going to ask you is that, and I probably should have asked Suresh also, is this whole notion of many companies create repositories of tools and trinkets which you may have built in different parts. Are you seeing that as an opportunity in this whole citizen developer space, especially within the companies where it just doesn't become a shadow of a shadow and such fragmented IT tools within the organization that we've made it worse before we've solved a problem?
Yeah. All of those are interesting questions. I think from a shadow IT perspective, organizations they're balancing things. They've got this citizen development approach that is lower cost. It can help increase speed. We've seen situations where speed goes up 10 times and the resources needed goes down by 70%, which is like incredible in terms of productivity gains and just getting things done. They're balancing that with the risks they perceive from a shadow IT perspective. So a lot of times what happens is you get a department creating something really, really cool, but that thing doesn't scale. Then the approach doesn't scale across the organization. And what we hope to do is by putting in these guardrails, by putting in these new ways of working, we hope to not only help the organization accelerate their transformation, but we hope to make it safe for that organization to do so and help them do it in an organized way so they can feel good about moving forward in this sort of structured way. You mentioned repositories and that sort of thing. Code repositories, reusability is always a huge thing within software. And one of the interesting situations you'll see, every platform is different. I think Suresh was talking about his platform a little bit and didn't really get into this. I think if you look at, say, Uncorked, that's just one software platform you could consider. They are able to develop highly sophisticated applications. Citizen developers using that platform can develop highly sophisticated applications in, say, I believe it's insurance and healthcare, because they've got a lot of pre-built modules that come with the platform that are commonly used within those industries. So you can look at platforms and see what modules they come with in terms of a repository. That gives you a base, and then as you build custom modules that can be reused, you can apply those to the repository as well. It's just like any other software development activity. The more you have in your toolkit to apply, to sort of sew together, the more you're going to increase productivity. It's kind of like if I asked you to make me a shirt and you have to start by measuring things and cutting out pieces of cloth and that sort of thing, here you're starting with all the pieces ready to go and you're just sewing them together. So it's a different sort of situation. And as you create new things, those things go into the repository.
So Dave, if I was somebody new who had not heard of PMI before I got here, what advice would you give folks on the call? How do they engage? How do they get themselves certified? Or even the notion that it's not just about me being able to use some of the tools and build something, but build a mindset which may not be completely, writing C code and figuring out pointers, but being able to solve the problem. So how do they start the discussion with, let's say, a PMI?
Yeah, so they can come out to our website. If you search on PMI and citizen development, you'll get to that link, and I believe it's www.pmi.org/citizen developer.
Mm-hmm.
And that will give you an introduction, sort of an entryway into everything that we're doing in the space. I think it's an interesting time for in that citizen development space for developers in general. You're entering a space where the developer participates in the ideation process. So, for instance, we have something within our framework called Ideation 2.0, where the developer is actually, it's more of a show and tell exercise. Typically, even with an agile sprint, you'd be writing stories and spending a lot of time in the requirements documentation part of software development. In Ideation 2.0, what we're having is a citizen developer participating in that ideation, and as the ideation is happening, they're actually building the application, and there's a translation. Not so much like gets lost in in translation. Things happen in real time, and the business acumen that developer picks up on during that process is incredible. They get a deeper understanding of the business problem and how to solve that business problem as we're moving through the ideation process. So I think it's interesting, both the bleed over from business people into the technology and the bleed over from the technologist into the business. Mm-hmm. Is just incredible. The cross-pollination that's happening there, and the requirement of just stakeholders on both sides is going up to really have a more holistic understanding of what's going on. Again, business people understanding the technology and understanding sort of the basics of coding, the logical sort of algorithmic operations, if statements, that sort of thing. And from the developer side, really needing to understand the business. I think Suresh was right. There's a lot, especially when you talk about the Indian IT space and business process outsourcing and that sort of thing. The history that's there. There's a lot that folks in India understand about business processes. But if you bring that all the way down to an individual level, the individual really needs to understand the problem at hand that they're dealing with, and the context that they're dealing with that problem within. Who are the upstream stakeholders, who are the downstream stakeholders, and what are the impact on those stakeholders of this application that they're putting in? Because they're usually not just changing one person's work; they're changing a lot of people's work, and the work of people sort of attached to the whole thing. So. Sorry, that was a very long-winded answer to your question.
No, that's good, because this leads me to the next point, which is everything we've spoken to so far is in the context of an enterprise or in the context of a company. But there's also a long tail, right? I'm a doctor. I'm a storefront. I run my own bakery. I'm a florist, and I want to build solutions for me, for my small team of 10, 12, 15. Or maybe even smaller than that. Or I want to build a simple thing which covers 3 of my suppliers and potentially 25, 30 of my customers. Is that an area also you see momentum coming towards you and people trying to build capabilities? Because that could be a pretty long tail of fragmented citizen developers.
Yeah, it's well, that some of those fall into the category of entrepreneurship again, and I think we've seen stories here in the U.S. of doctors, creating applications related to COVID, that sort of thing. So this isn't just kids working on things. The city of New York created a disaster recovery system in under 2 weeks. Related to COVID, how might they distribute vaccine? How might they distribute masks? That sort of thing was handled with a no-code application that it was built in really short order, just by with using a team of, I think it was under 5. So there's a lot happening. There's a lot happening in the law firm space, as that's very sort of workflow oriented. So lawyers. Legal assistants of all stripes are getting into this, and once they've built something, they sell it to the next law firm down the road. So there's just a lot of opportunity here. So
awesome.
I think
we're going to try and wrap up, but I want to make sure I at least got some of your takeaways, and then please correct me as I go along. Number one, I think what I like to say was that this is absolutely a wonderful time to be a young person in this industry, anywhere on the globe. Excuse me. There are enough and more problems which will need to be solved, right? Get yourself, quote unquote, certified at different levels and go off and solve those problems. The tools, the techniques, the frameworks exist for you to be able to go solve them. Any other advice you would have in closing?
No, absolutely. I think it's easy to go in and just build an app, and that's a little bit deceptive in that it's easier to build an app that's good just for you than it is to build an app that's truly transformative within your organization. And I think that's what we're trying to do with these certifications, and that's what we're trying to do with the maturity model. Build a holistic perspective both for the individual and for the organization, so that what you're building is good for everybody. And if you're certified in that sort of mindset, certified in that approach, then you're going to be more productive. You're going to be more valuable to the organization, and at the end of the day, you're going to be more marketable. So it's a win-win for everybody involved. And again, we'd love to have more people involved in this. Please reach out to me over LinkedIn or by email, and I'd love to talk to you.
Great, thanks, Dave. Appreciate it. Opportunity for young folks, lots of improvement and efficiency for large organizations, lots of problems to be solved, right? All good, all opportunistic. Go. Love it, Dave. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Narendra.
Appreciate it.